So let's try to model a more realistic and attractive button for our joystick, because currently that's just only a sphere dummy. I'm going into the right view and I'm going to select my sphere, copy and paste, and then I move it out of my scene or the joystick somewhere there. And as you can see, the object is rotated. So I'm going to information window, and then inside the transform area reset the rotation. And then I would like to make use of my grid, and with the Alt key pressed and left mouse button, I'm going just to position the sphere somewhere on the grid. So you can see here how far, for example, the sphere intersects into the top surface of the joystick. And I can maybe use one of those grid lines while it's straight, somewhat as a helper to visualize the surface. So maybe somewhere there, so here and there would be this point and this point. Okay, so now to draw a button. In this case, I'm going to start working with a CV curve. And I'm actually starting somewhere here. Pressing Alt, so I snap to the grid. Press Alt again, so that those points are vertical. Maybe I press the right mouse button to make 1 or 2 extra points. So you see I have 3 points in a line. That means this part of the curve will remain being straight. And then maybe I can think about how I would like the button look. So kind of like drafting kind of like the edge. I'm going to use the revolve tool later, and then middle mouse button and pressing Alt. There. Now it's snapped to the center part. And then I can select the other points, for example those and those, maybe this one as well, and then go to move, middle mouse button, and just move them in. And of course you see everything is a little bit too big, but that's not really a big problem, because now I can go ahead and deselect this point and this point, and then move those points slightly down. And I have to do a little bit of adjustment. So for example, maybe to make it easier, the sphere for a moment I'm going to hide. And then this point, middle mouse button, I move a little bit to the right, select those two, can zoom in a little bit, right mouse button, move them up and down, but with the Control key pressed, I snap it to this button, so those buttons are at a nice line. Actually, all I need are just 2 points at least at the same level, so when we do a revolve, this area will be tangent. Of course, if I snap, for example, to this point, the curvature will be a little bit smoother. So maybe I leave it at this point. And maybe I would like, in general, the arc be a little bit tighter. So I'm going to select those points, move them to here, and maybe those points move down down a little bit. I should reset my pivot point for the curve. So I'm going to move this one to the right and then press Control key and snap to a control point. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Let's make the sphere visible again. So everything size-wise looks okay. Turning off the hardware shading. I'm going to pick my curve and then I'm going to apply a revolve tool. As you can see, it's a little bit off. So the middle part, with my Alt key pressed, I can snap to a grid. And because this point is snapped to this grid and I snap the center axis to the grid, my revolve tool is complete and I do not have, for example, an opening in the top part. So when I go into perspective view and then turn on hardware shading, you see this is closed. So the button actually doesn't look too bad. So let's see how it will look like when we start intersecting the button into the main body. But I don't move now the surface. I'm actually going only to move the curve. So I select my curve. As you can see, the surface lines are magenta. Again, that means that this curve, which I selected, affects all the surfaces that have that magenta outline. Which also means if I move the curve, the surface will follow it. So I go to transform, maybe move it down a little bit, move it over to the right. Then I can rotate it from the right view. You can see Z and X. Z is the right key, X is the left key, and Y, that's you're looking basically the way how you look at the screen, that is the Y axis. So middle mouse button, press middle mouse button and rotate my profile. And that's also the reason why I reset the pivot point to the beginning of that curve, because I'm rotating my button around that point. And you see this way I can quite comfortably position my button into the scene. And then let's sync it into the joystick surface. And at this point maybe I would like to hide the sphere. I'm going to create a new layer and assign the button to there. Assign, okay. Good. And you see, well, I have to do a little bit of more rotating for the curve because the rotation is not yet really good and even. So now it looks like those magenta lines are somewhat parallel to the surface curvature. Maybe we can do it this way and then sink it in maybe a little bit more. Yeah, maybe this might be good. So let's see how this will look in 3D. And this, of course, looks a lot better.